So welcome, everybody. We'll get started with the monthly meeting of the Haliburton Highlands Ontario Provincial Police Detachment Board. You all would have received the agenda, which you should have in front of you. Just call the meeting to order. And we'll ask Sue to do our land acknowledgement.
We respectfully acknowledge that the County of Haliburton is located on Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We acknowledge a shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial.
Thanks, Sue. Next on our agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Do I have any today from members? Should acknowledge member McKechnie is not present today, but everybody else is. Next on our agenda, the adoption of the agenda that was sent to you by email last week. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda? Member Hodgson, Member Carter, all in favor? So approved. Next is the adoption of our minutes from the previous meeting, which was held June 18th, 2025 here. You were sent the minutes from the meeting. Ask for a motion to accept it, then I'll speak to the matter. So first is Member Danielson, Member Shavadukas. Just to follow up, you would have all received an email on June 18th from Lisa Rauter from the OPP. She had done the presentation around budget process. There was a number of questions of the board had asked at the time, and she did respond to those the next day. So nice to see that quick turnaround on those responses. Any other questions about the minutes of the last meeting or any additions, deletions? Seeing none, all in favor? And so approved. Thank you. Next is delegations and presentations, which I don't believe we have any today, Sue. We'll shorten our meeting down for a change. Next up, items of business. So 7.1 on our agenda was a 2026 update on our budget. Gary Dykey, the CAO, had asked to speak, but he spoke to me before the meeting. Doesn't really have any major updates for us other than just to let us know that the budget is still in process. He has taken the budget forward that we had approved at the last meeting. He believes it'll have a very small impact on the overall budget, and it will be presented to council at the December meeting, I believe it is. So stay tuned for that. Should also please the board to know one of the things that came up when I was reviewing the budget is the per diems for members of the board. And when I went back and looked, we haven't received any per diems for last year. That's why it shows a zero amount on the budget. So Pam's looking into that for us to find the glitch in the process. That I know you're all highly paid for these board positions.
Sir, we haven't been paid yet, or we have?
I don't believe we've been paid yet. Either.
Well, my goodness, it's going to be a big one when it all comes in.
Yeah, stay tuned. You'll be able to get a donut and a coffee. I dawned on me as I was just happening to go through the budget. I went, I don't remember seeing anything, so I asked Sue and Pam, and they're looking into it. So that doesn't require a motion because there's really nothing to update you on, just other than what I provided. Next on the agenda is 7.2, which is our insurance and the abuse policy. And again, you all should have the draft abuse, violence, harassment policy that was sent to you. You remember we received it at the last meeting, but there was a couple of things that I wanted to either review a bit further and add to it. And again, thanks, Sue, for all your work on pulling that together. I will apologize in advance because I just spoke to Sue as we got here this afternoon to let her know I've got a number of amendments, which I will send to her. They are not major changes. They're more contextual in that a lot of the policy that was crafted was brought from another example policy or from the county's policy. And so there's a couple of times in the document where it refers to things such as one or more individual and a worker. Technically, as a board, we don't have workers. The workers are all employed by the county, so they're covered by that policy. And it talks about the prevention strategy and things like that, which are all the county's policy. So we're going to add into our policy where it refers to that county policy so that it's clear as to who's holding that policy, who's holding the prevention program, and just a few other things like that. And then there's a section on investigation. When it speaks to complaints being received by the board, the complaint should come to the board chair, and then if it needs to be investigated, we'll send it out to be investigated. The board chair technically wouldn't investigate it, but we'd send it to somebody to investigate. So that is the proposed changes, or what I'm proposing that I send to Sue. Member Carter?
Just on the investigation, so who does the investigation? Because the investigation is either, or the accusation is either against one of us
Yes.
or the OPP. So it's very difficult to get the OPP involved. So who does the investigation? And the second part of it comes back to the budget, is that, you have to pay for somebody to investigate.
Yes.
And how does that affect our budget?
So if I could address the first part, if it involved an OPP member, then that would not be the purview of the board to investigate. That would actually go to the inspectorate of policing, and they would have to designate somebody to investigate, and they would follow through that process, or there'd be an internal investigation through professional standards. This policy just pertains to anything that came from the board. So if there was a member of the board felt they were being harassed or bullied, that they would bring that to the board's attention, and then there's a reconciliation process in here that you could try and resolve it. If we can't resolve it, then we'd have to send it out to some human resource investigative firm to actually investigate, which, to your second part, would then cost money, which is that legal fund that we set aside in the budget. And I did speak to Gary, and he's going to leave that in our budget so that it will cover the low-hanging fruit, if you want to call it that, those investigative pieces that can be done. But if we were ever to hire a lawyer to represent us, it would be done through the county's budget. So that's what that legal fund is really for: hiring investigators, hiring somebody that has that skill set to do those investigations. Does that clarify things? And before I go any further, I really just need to backtrack, because my friendly right-hand person has reminded me the motions are supposed to come from Pam. So I'll just backtrack to item 4. Pam, if you would read the motion, hopefully you caught the people that, and then we'll ask for the call for the question.
Moved by member Hodgson and seconded by member Carter, be it resolved that the agenda for the September 24th, 2025 meeting of the Haliburton Highlands Ontario Provincial Police Detachment Board be approved.
All in favor? Any against? Seeing none, it's approved.
Okay, and moved by member Danielson and seconded by member Shevadukis, be it resolved that the minutes of the June 18th, 2025 meeting of the Haliburton Highlands Ontario Provincial Police Detachment Board be hereby approved.
All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, it's carried. Thank you, Pam. All right, so back to 7.2. Any other questions about the policy, or people have any other comments having read the policy, or any suggestions for change, concerns? If not, I will send the proposed amendments to Sue, and we will get the policy in final draft at the next meeting. And Sue, if you would like to just give a quick update on the insurance and where we stand with that.
Yeah, so there has been just last week, there's a portal for us to apply for the group insurance that this board approved earlier in the spring. So once we apply to that, I think there was a question sent around by email just to check on some further details. Once we apply to that, the certificate is issued quite quickly, within typically in a few hours. And the insurance policy the abuse policy for the insurance can come at a later date, within 30 days of us requesting the insurance certificate and policy.
Thanks, Sue. Any questions arising from that? And I'll just ask our mayors in attendance for some guidance on this one. Do we need a further motion at this point? We already had a motion at our last meeting to receive the draft policy. We've now got a revised version of that draft policy, so I'm assuming we need a motion to receive the revised draft policy. And then when we get to the final one, we'll approve the final. Right, so I will ask for a motion then to receive the revised draft policy 1-2025, abuse, violence, and harassment. Member Danielson, Member Burton. Can we approve it if it's,
Can we approve
Not
with
final.
amendments? Are you guys okay to approve with amendments that you don't see?
yeah, I just hate to, again, because some of the amendments I've suggested, I've mentioned them to you, but I'd probably see them in the black and white if you're okay with that.
Mhm.
All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, it's approved. Thank you. Next up is 7.3 and probably our biggest item for discussion today. That's our local action plan and the board's community survey results. Just to give some background, and then I'll turn it over to Sue to present to you the results of the survey. Back on, as you may recall, August 5th, I sent the board an email just outlining once again that we're required under the Community Safety and Policing Act to participate in the local action plan. It is the detachment commander's responsibility to prepare it, but it says so in consultation with the board. So when I met with Deb McClure, our detachment commander, back on July 29th, because it dawned on me that we were going to be off for the summer and we really needed to get this going a little bit sooner. At the same time, Deb received an email from headquarters saying that her plan had to be submitted by October 15th, which was going to be coming up quickly. And we only have this meeting to try and resolve it. So when I met with Deb, it talks about in the act that the board, that she should participate in community consultation, including consultation with the board, including consultation with band councils, community organizations, business members, etc. We didn't have enough time to do a fulsome host town hall meetings and those sort of things, but we felt that we should do some sort of consultation and do some reach out. So that's why I sent it out to the board to ask each one of the members of the board to represent their specific writings, and if you had some ideas and suggestions to bring those back to us before this meeting. I did get phone calls from both Member Hodgson and Member Shevadukis. Appreciate your feedback, gentlemen, that we pulled into that to give that back to Deb on the importance of community engagement, the importance of enforcement where possible. And then on August 8th, thankfully, Sue reached out and said that she was more than willing to pull together a survey, which astounded me that we could do that so quickly, but she did. Very, very thankful for the content. We met with Deb to go over what that would include. We were back and forth on a couple of versions of it, and that survey went out. It was posted on our website. It was posted on the county's website. It was sent specifically to certain organizations, to members of our community partner organizations, and then we provided paper copies. Sue provided paper copies for anyone that could not receive them electronically. And what I will now do is just ask Sue to speak to the results, and then I'll speak to some next steps as to where we go from today. So, Sue, if you'll take it from there.
Thanks for that, Andrew. Yes, we did pull together this survey, and I'm happy that it came together so quickly. It would not have come together so quickly without the IT and admin support of some staff here. So very thankful for the work that they did to help make it happen. The survey launched via social media on August 25th. The survey link was sent to all municipal staff and councillors throughout Haliburton County, with paper versions being available as noted through local municipal offices and local libraries. A news release about the survey was posted to the county's news and notices page, and this news release was distributed to all residents who have signed up for news updates. It was also sent to all members of the Haliburton County Service Providers Network and the local Human Services and Justice Coordinating Committee for themselves or the people they serve, or the people they serve. It also went out to several lake associations, residents who we could touch base with through group email addresses. And then we also purchased a Facebook ad so that we could inform social media users who, not just the county page followers, but anyone within Haliburton County of the survey. We did receive a quick response, and this slide shows where those responses came from. So really interesting to see see that it was quite even throughout Haliburton County. There were 224 responses in the 2.5 weeks that the survey was open. Minden Hills and Highlands East, just over 27%, Dysart et al., just over 24%, and Algonquin Highlands, just over 20%. Next slide, please, Blake. So respondents were first asked to rank the following types of crime in order of priority for police attention in their community. When ranking priorities, number 1 was a top priority, then number 2, and so on. When respondents shifted one response, they could then shift the others below to rank their priorities. And so you can see here the top responses were property crime, theft and vandalism, drug-related offenses, and violent crime, assault and robbery.
I can just jump in quickly, Sue. Each of the categories you're going to see that we included in the survey were the 3 main pillars that were already in the existing action plan, and that Deb, when we met, we'd gone through to say, are these still going to be the same plan going forward? So that we were working from an existing plan rather than just coming up with these categories ourselves.
That's right. And then the next slide, please, Blake. So next, respondents were asked to put the following crime prevention strategies in order of effectiveness for their community. The top responses were increased police patrols, mental health and addiction support services, and collaboration between police and local businesses to prevent crime. In the next slide, respondents were asked to prioritize the following traffic concerns from most to least problematic. The top responses were speeding, impaired driving, and distracted driving. And in the next slide, respondents were asked to rank the following waterway safety concerns from most to least problematic, with the top responses being reckless operation of watercraft, boating under the influence, and lack of enforcement of boating regulations. The next slide shows respondents were asked to rank the following trail safety concerns from most to least problematic, with the top responses being unauthorized motorized vehicle usage, lack of enforcement of trail regulations, and safety concerns for pedestrians and cyclists. And in the next slide, we show that respondents were asked what they believe is the biggest challenge affecting community well-being, with top priorities being listed here. And then in the next slide, we asked, in what way would respondents like to see police more engaged? Oh, sorry, this is the slide after this. Yeah. In what way would respondents like to see police more engaged within their community? So increased presence at community events, more foot and bike patrols in neighborhoods, organizing youth engagement activities, and hosting safety workshops and education programs. And the last slide shows how respondents ranked which community activities they would like the police to participate in within the community. So yes, in total, we received 224 responses, some written responses as well, which we'll look through. And the detachment commander does now have access to these responses.
Thanks, Sue. Just take some questions. I know Member Hodgson had one first and then Member Carter. So.
Thank you, and thanks for your work on that. See, that's very helpful. If we go back at the, not that we need to put it back up, but you'll see the big 3 that we called are, I find it kind of interesting. So, you know, break and enters, violence, drugs, the rest of them dwarf. So when we get into how we'd like to have traffic, water, and trails, those are all important ways to address the crime on that. But the community, those aren't real worries on our community. So when we get to the next part on our responses, my question is, and then when I read through it, are those mostly generic responses for the province, or were there some tailored specifically to our situation? I guess is my question. Because I think if we look into resources putting resources to different areas, our community is concerned with break and enters, concerned with drugs, and I don't see enforcement on any of the areas. Like that's one of the areas that would go after drugs, for instance. You know, whereas we're talking about community engagement and whatnot, I'd like to see, I'd be much more hopeful if I saw increased enforcement. And if there's not concern in our trails, let's not worry as much about our trails compared to the items that people have pointed out to be the most worrisome to them. So that's my input.
Yeah, so I'll try and answer that as best I can, Andrew, and then it may have to be deferred to Deb or to Mike for some further input. But when we looked at the action plan that was drafted initially by Deb, the three categories that come up, the crime being one category, and then the roadways, waterways, and trails is a subcategory or a second category, and then community well-being is the third one. They are required to have action items in each one of those categories. So they have to try and balance their staffing to impact each one of those. So in the past, it wasn't just roadway enforcement like traffic enforcement, but they heard from the community in the past that waterway enforcement and trail enforcement was important. So those still exist in here. I can tell you, having met with Deb to go over the survey, it's all going to come down to staffing and where the need to deploy those staff is the most important, right? And so when it comes to the crime category, she has specific investigators, drug investigators, a crime unit that would investigate break and enters and thefts and those sort of things that are going to dedicate them to that pillar. She's got general patrol officers that will dedicate themselves to the traffic one and then any other response. And then she has to look at the community well-being piece and see what resources she has left. You know, she has one officer, can't remember his name, Joel Imbo, that, you know, he does a lot of the prevention stuff and a lot of the engagement with the community. But, you know, we're then asking her to say, okay, the officers, when they're on general patrol, if they have time in between going to court on day shift, in between this, in between that, in between all the other things that we're prioritizing, please get out of your car and walk for half an hour, please engage with the school, or please. So that's what, you know, that's for the board to ask. Whether she can pull it off will be for us to assess her on at the end of the year, which is one of the items on our agenda today. So it really is a balancing act for her, Andrew, as far as, you know, where those priorities are. And the other part of it is that if we get those bigger crime issues, then she has the ability to draw in those additional resources, right? From our street crime units, from the drug unit, from the other things like that. But she's trying to, and that's where, even with some of the things like the waterway safety and the trail safety, one of the things that we're looking to do this year, instead of putting two officers in a boat out on the water, she can take a patrol officer and put them at a boat ramp and accomplish the same thing, because the boats are all going by that boat ramp point. So you don't have to have specialized skills. You don't have to be a boat officer, a marine officer, to stand at a boat ramp and say, let me see your life jackets, let me see if you've been drinking, those sort of things. Similarly with the trails, you either have specialized people on snowmobiles or ATVs, have to go out in a team, or you have a patrol car sitting at the start of a trailhead and say, let me see your permits, let me see this, doing ride checks and those sort of things, which is less impact on her resources to then free up the resources to do the community well-being piece. So those are some of the conversations we had when we met. So does that answer your question? If not, I'll turn it to Mike.
No, it's the key to the question is allocation of resources, you know, moving, shifting around. And I've said before at this table, and I'm on lakes every day, there's not the boat traffic there used to be, partially demographics, costs, whatever. And when people that talk to me, they say, I see a police boat, the only boat on the road, on the lake today is a police boat, but we got drugs being sold in our high school. That raises issues.
Yes.
So the whole question is around allocation of resources, and that's my point, is that we shift off of certain areas to get on the street and into the schools and charge people. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate the challenge she has.
Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. And I think that's where, in meeting with Deb, in order to be one of those marine officers requires additional training and skill sets and all this stuff. So that's a huge draw on the resources as well. If you want to be a school liaison officer, you have to go specialized training, versus using a general patrol officer with some general skills to be able to do those duties, which then frees up the specialists, your drug crime investigators, your property crime investigators, to do the work they need to do. So that's what, in the conversation we've had, is around that balance. Remember, Carter?
So I guess you know, we have to get back to the goal and, you know, what it is that we're supposed to be doing here. Like, if you look at, you know, some of the results is what people think in a survey are the big issues, or, you know, how they want to, you know, resolve them by having more town halls and by, you know, seeing officers ride their bikes through the neighborhood. We have to look at that, the perceived thoughts of versus the actual statistics. I mean, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm more concerned with what's coming out of the statistics that's showing me that I've got domestic violence, I've got that. Those need to be the priorities, you know, because people get into their mind that, you know, there's rampant crime in the neighborhood and, you know, there's all these break-ins and things like that. If the statistics show that that's secondary to something else, you know, like it's juggling the politics versus the reality. And so I think we have to be very mindful of that also, and very, very careful about how we, allocate our resources.
Absolutely. And one of the conversations I've had with Deb in preparing this is that notion of perceived versus actual. Um, I know that the OPP supports it, something Deb and I have been talking about, this notion of evidence-based policing. So where does the evidence take you? Where do the numbers take you? But at the same time, that has to be balanced with the prevention mechanisms, which are very hard to measure. That officer on the beat downtown, the officer riding through your neighborhood has a prevention notion to it. Hard to measure. What did you prevent from happening? So it's really, how do you balance reactive policing versus proactive policing, or, prevention policing, and making sure your resources are in both places. Because if they're strictly reactive policing, then they're not going to have time to do the other stuff that we want them to do. And that's important as far as engaging with the community. Member Danielson?
One of the things that we could probably encourage as well, particularly with respect to waterways and trails, is partnerships, because some of the responsibility can be taken up by, bylaw officers, depending on where the trails are, who owns the trails. So I think there's some support that can be offered to police through partnerships. The same as with waterways, and I don't want to take away from the efficiency of the police when it comes to patrolling lakes, but we've got 600 lakes versus the number of staff that we've got trained to do that. And from what I've heard, the minute a police boat shows up in a lake, everybody just disappears until they're gone. I mean, that's pretty hard to deal with. But what we could do is have better communications with the lake associations, and try and, and do some encouragement of communication with their members.
You'll be happy to know that in the subcategories that Deb has identified is to continue working with groups like SAVE and other organizations, and enhancing the auxiliary presence and some of those things. So I think that's where the conversation she and I've had around those community partnerships are key to doing everything that we expect them to do. They can't do it all with the members they've got. So we'll make sure she sticks to those action items. And, Member Shevadukas.
And I think Bob mentioned it, and mentioned it well, about people being educated about what goes on. And I think, speaking from experience, a lot of civilians, and a good category, they don't understand how the policing world works, or what this gentleman's job or Deb's job is all about. And as we're talking about, it's manpower, and that it doesn't, they need to be explained. So you may need, and I'll call it a necessary evil, because years ago, and I'll date myself, I had several meetings with the community with then the new chief, Julie Fantino. And yes, these sessions could get, one way or another, but the majority of people that you come and respond to, and if we can set this up or suggest it, if you go to one of these two community meetings and explain how it works, and say, how many cars we got out? 4 cars for the whole county on general patrol. And all of a sudden you explain to them that they're doing this, 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 and this. And all of a sudden they go, oh, okay, well, fine. Yeah, okay, we have the problems. Now we know how they are limited. They can only do so much. And that's all they want. And that's what the people's feedback was from years ago. And I'm sure it would probably be the same now. As for boats, yeah. And we used to have a saying, okay, you got to go out if it's quiet, go put the boats on the lake. Yes, I know from experience up in Haliburton Lake, when the boat comes around, everybody's gone. But I did. But the general perception is, oh, the boat's here. Okay, the old saying was, you're waving the flag. From the perspective of the unit commander, you're waving the flag, you're going out and doing as many as you can, but your priorities are elsewhere. So, it's one of these balancing acts that you go through all the time, and public education is the strongest thing. And if we have some of these community sessions, and if Deb agrees, or if we all agree, and just let people know what goes on in a detachment, how many square miles, because a lot of people won't know how many square miles those 4 cars go out to general patrol. And if 1 or 2 get tied up way down near Norland or wherever, and something happens up in Halls Lake, what's going to happen now? Or up in Stanhope? These people have to realize what goes on, and then they'll know what's going on, and they'll be understanding a lot better then.
No, and you and I are on the same page there, Andy, but you know, the challenge for Deb is, and the challenge for the board is, we don't want to get out there in front of the public and say, we only have 3 cars or we only have 4 cars. Because then the bad guys go, great, you've only got 3 cars or only 4 cars, right? So it's not, it's kind of a chess game out there to let them know that when they're free, when they're available. Plus, we have the benefit of, and we talked about this at the last meeting, this cross-jurisdictional side that every member of the OPP that goes through our areas has their radio on. They are able to respond. Deb can call on the resources from south of us, east of us, west of us, so if there's something big going on, she draws on those resources, and that's what we need to keep encouraging, is that, you know, we might be a small detachment, but the advantage, again, you know, coming from that municipal background, the advantage of the OPP versus a municipal service is they have an ultimatum or an entity of thousands and thousands of officers versus a municipal agency only had what was working that day. They can draw on, OPP can draw on those regional units, the drug units, the tactical teams, all the stuff they need to draw on when something goes down. So it'll also please you to know, Andy, that one of the pieces that Deb and I talked about when we were looking at the consultation piece, we knew it was short and we weren't going to have a lot of time, that what we agreed to do is once the action plan is firmed up and approved, Deb will then get out to do some town hall meetings and engage with the community to say, this is what our action plan is. You had a chance to participate, but in case you didn't, this is where we're at, this is what we're doing, this is the focus for the next 3 years or 4-year plan, and this can be our focus for year 1 of that plan. So that's what we hope to do, is do a bit of a traveling roadshow once the plan's approved. And that'll be that education piece that hopefully will.
Yeah, but you know, you understand where I'm coming from, and the public, the general public needs to be, they have to know where the game is. Just because the officer is sitting there and he's having a coffee, oh geez, why is he doing that? They have to realize he just finished doing like 4 or 5 radio calls and he's trying to have his lunch. Or why is he not sitting here patrolling this or doing that? There's reasons why, and if you can point it out to them, then they have a better understanding. That was all my point of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where we're, you know, in the conversation with Deb, it's if an officer's got a report to do with the technology of today, they can do a lot of that in the car. So park your car instead of going in behind a building quietly to sit and do your report. Park your car right on 35 highway. They think you're running radar when your head's down doing a report. So you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You're getting your work done, but you're also being proactive in your enforcement measures. So it's using those, you know, cross-pollinating those tools and using what they can. Any other questions on the survey or the process? The next steps for us on the process is to take the feedback from today's meeting back to Deb. She's already got the survey results. Sue shared that with her. Deb will then, in the weeks to come, draft the final version of the plan. She's already encompassed some of the things that we met with and talked about before. And she will then take that up the chain of command within the OPP. It doesn't necessarily come back to the board now for final approval. We have a consultation role to play. We then say, this is what we'd like to see happen. She will take that plan to headquarters, get the approval of it, and then it comes back as her work plan for the detachment for the next 4 years. Member Carter.
And as I understand it, if we think that that plan is not sufficient or whatever in any way, then we can put back to the OPP, hey, we want more of this or more, less of that or whatever, right?
Absolutely. And that also comes through that performance metrics piece that which I'll speak to on the next later in the agenda, about what things we want the detachment commander to work on for this year. What are the priorities to the board versus what are the priorities to her? And then say, this is what we're going to evaluate you on at the end of the year. Absolutely. It's a continuous feedback. And I think we're talking, one of the items on here is about the annual report. That's another way for us to have that check-in to say, are you actually doing what you committed to do under the action plan? All right. Any other questions on that item? If not, I will ask for a motion to accept the draft local action plan and the board's community survey results. Member Carter, Member Burton.
Moved by Member Carter and seconded by Member Burton that the local action plan and HHOPP DB community survey results be received for information.
All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, it's approved. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda is just an information item, 7.4. The Ontario Association of Police Services Board of Zone 3, of which we are a part of, they host quarterly meetings. Their next meeting is scheduled for October 14th, 2025. This is an in-person meeting as opposed to a Zoom meeting, which we had the last time they hosted a meeting. It'll be held in York Region. I do plan to attend and I've registered for that. As we've said in previous emails, other members of the board are welcome to attend. We just have to make sure not to meet quorum, in which case it would constitute a board meeting for us at some other location. So I will bring back a report at the next meeting after that as to any items that come up at the board meeting or at the zone meeting. So it's just an information item. If you'd like to attend, I think Sue or Pam had already sent the information to you and you had a chance to register. If you didn't get it, follow up with Sue afterwards. We can arrange to get a couple of us sent if we need to go down to. All right. Yep, Sue?
Just wanted to note that it is actually, yes, it is being held in person, but I believe there is some sort of virtual option as well. They're preferring in person if you're able to make it, but if the best way for you to access that is virtual, that is also an option.
Thanks. Next on the agenda is 7.5, an item for discussion with the board. Is around board communication with the detachment commander. Again, as Deb is new to the role as detachment commander, I've had a couple of opportunities to meet with her and go through some of the expectations, what we're looking for as a board, some of those pieces, and that inevitably turned to how do we want Deb to communicate with us as a board? How do we want us to communicate with her? Recognizing we have to be careful around emails because they're all disclosable. They could constitute board business if we're directing things like that. So what is being proposed at this point, and when I met with Deb, is that if there is something of magnitude going on within the county, i.e. there's an increased police presence or there's a barricaded person call where there's a perimeter set up and those sort of things, as soon as she becomes aware of it, she will notify me. I will then send that out to the board with as much detail as she can provide. A lot of times it's not a lot because it is an ongoing operational case, so she can't tell us what it involves. It's usually just there's an increased police presence at this location. If it's not of such a large magnitude as that, but there's, say for example, a police call that requires 3 officers and there's 3 or 4 cars at a certain call, and she learns of that call, she will notify me and I'll notify the mayor of that community in which it's occurring in, just so that if you get questions from your constituents the next morning saying, what was going on last night? I saw 3 cars on such and such island, or I saw 3 cars in front of this car, or there was a fire truck and 5 police cars at the fairground. What was going on? You'll at least know that it was just a call for service or there was a medical call or something like that going on. That again, she won't be able to share a lot of operational details with us, but she will share what she can as often as she can. The caveat to that is Deb, like any person, has a life outside of her job. She is required to sleep from time to time. So when she goes home at night, she may go to bed and not get a phone call or not see an email at 2 o'clock in the morning, but she'll read it when she wakes up at 5 or 6 in the morning and will then send it on if she thinks, or we'll try and find out more details of that time. The second caveat to it, and what I expressed my concern to her about this process that we put in place, is I might be busy. So I might get that email and there might be an hour or 2 delay before I get it out to you. In which case, if she sees that nothing has come out quick enough, she will then send that directly to the mayor of the municipality, so that, because I will copy her obviously when I send it out to you guys. But if she doesn't see that in a timely fashion because I'm sleeping or otherwise outside cutting my lawn without my phone in my pocket, that she will then look after that and send it to the mayor. She won't send it to the whole board because she says she's concerned about that reporting protocols, but she will at least make sure the mayor of that jurisdiction is aware. Other than that is, and the other piece she and I talked about is the ability for the board to contact her directly. She would ask that where possible. She has no problem meeting with the mayors, talking to people in the community. She's asking if it's specific to board business that we send it through the chair so that we have some record of it and that we don't overstep those boundaries of directing the detachment commander to do something, that she doesn't feel that somebody's got her on a short leash and telling her what to do. Because that would be outside of the act and what we're permitted to do. So she has had a couple of incidents in the past month or so where she's getting lots of emails from, say, a lake association or a road association or something else. And she's asked for my support on how to deal with those. I've been very clear that's an operational issue that doesn't need to come to the board, that she can handle that. And I would suggest that she send that to an operational sergeant or somebody in the field that can deal with that, because if she is now going to every community meeting and attending every lake association and every road association, she's never going to get her work done. So she's going to endeavor to pass that work down to where it belongs and then keep herself engaged. If something comes up bigger and requires her attendance, she will then speak to it. So questions about the protocol. Member Danielson?
So I'm assuming that doesn't preclude the mayors if we see that there's a serious issue going on in our municipality that's ongoing from us contacting her and just saying like, what can we do about this, or having a discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Member Danielson, all I would ask is if you do reach out to her if you can just let me know. So if I'm meeting with Deb at a separate time and she says, oh, I met with Member Danielson, I go, oh, I didn't know about that. What was that? Is that to do with deployment of resources? Is that to do with this? So if you can just keep the chair informed, then that helps me stay on top of things with her as well. Member Carter?
I think the ones, when you mentioned lake associations, I mean, I think the really has to decide whether or not it's truly an OPP issue or they should be reporting it into the township. Because at the end of the day, the police are, one of our departments. And, the lake associations and back to the 600 lakes, because it's happening in one place, it's probably happening somewhere else. And if we're not aware of it, then, we remain blissfully unaware, which is sometimes good, but, generally, we need to know that. The second thing is, the important part of that communication is, was about a year ago, they were serving a warrant here in Minden, and however, whatever group was involved in supporting the people serving the warrant, they were walking down the street with camo gear and automatic weapons, and that changed. Some of the neighbors got a little bit antsy about that, and so us having some knowledge, when these types of events are occurring is sometimes very good.
Absolutely, and I'll touch on your last comment. When I went to meet with Deb to go over the action plan, as I was pulling in the parking lot, there was 3 tactical vehicles and almost a armored vehicle in the back part with all these tactical guys. And of course, with my background, I wasn't too alarmed by it. But I said to Deb when I met her, I said, "Oh, busy night for the boys," and she said, "Oh yeah, they were out doing a warrant." She goes, "I just found out about it this morning too." And they don't always. Again, it's depending on where that level of command goes to. They may be deploying staff, and she would find out about it after the fact. So when she does know, she'll let us know, and if not, she'll then impart that request upon her staff to say, "Would you please let me know so I can let the board know." The only and just to address your first part, Member Carter, is that I think we have to be careful about asking the public to go to their counselor if it's a police matter. We have to be very careful that we don't become a cog in the wheel that now becomes part of a disclosure process to say, well, if there, say for example, and I've used this in the past, if a member of the public comes to a counselor concerned about a speeding car or a guy in the neighborhood that's driving like a maniac, and the counselor doesn't act on it fast enough, and that person kills somebody, then the police had no knowledge of it. When they do the investigation, the first witness to be called is going to be the counselor saying, "So why didn't you pass this along? Because this was an ongoing danger to society, blah, blah, blah." So I think it's just keeping those lines of communication open, but making sure they know if it's, for example, a speeding offense or a speeding issue, go to the detachment, file the report, and then let your counselor know as well, because then, as you say, there's other things going on that could be.
Yeah, I just assume that if it's, if you're getting outreach from a member of the public on a specific event, but if it's a lake association talking to you, it's probably not like, not an ongoing criminal act going on. I'm just, it's just, I don't want the OPP to get bogged down in a lot of things that are civic matters or neighbor disputes. I mean, that's not the role.
Yeah, and again, it's one of the survey questions was around boating, and one of the very first things we heard back from people was the concerns about these big wake boats. And it was, okay, so what would you like the police to do about the wake boats? They're not committing an offense, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. So is it really a police matter versus a lake association education matter to say, do you understand what the impact of your wake on the shore is doing? Those sort of things. That's not necessarily if they're speeding. Yes, it would be a police thing, but not if they're just causing a big wave on the lake. So, last member, Burden.
My question's pretty much been answered by the conversation, but I'd just like to say that I'm fine with the protocol the way you have it set up. I'll certainly support it.
Good. Thank you very much. Again, I don't know that this requires a motion. It's more of an information item and discussion for the board. I'll turn to the members of council if you'd like to make a motion to accept the communication protocol as determined? Or to receive it? Okay, so we'll have ask for a motion to receive the report on board communication with the detachment commander as discussed. Member Danielson, Member Burton. Yes, that a motion to receive the board communication with detachment commander discussion item. And I guess discussion item and protocol. With Member Danielson, seconded by Member Burton.
I'm on top of it now. Okay. Moved by member Danielson, seconded by member Burton to receive the board communication with the detachment commander discussion item and protocol. Be received. Oh, no, that was at the beginning. Sorry, let me try it again. To receive the board communication with the detachment commander discussion item and protocol.
All in favor? So approved. Thank you. Next on our agenda, 7.6, the 2024 Detachment Board Annual Report. And again, that was circulated part of your agenda package. If you recall, the last meeting Deb spoke about when we were talking about our action plan, she mentioned that there would be an annual report coming. The reason why I made sure this went out to the board in advance is that I believe Deb did have a presentation to council to introduce herself, and this annual report may have been a part of that presentation. So I just want to make sure the board had seen it and was aware of it. Again, just a couple of real high level notes on it. Obviously, the key priorities as determined by the OPP in general is their people, the work, and the communities. That's an overarching OPP priority. If you looked at page 4 of that annual report, there was a really, I think, a great message by our new detachment commander, Deb, and it actually spoke to a summary of what the report included. If you looked at page 7, 8, and 9, there was a progress report on the 3 different categories: the crime category, the road and water and trail safety one, and the community well-being. So speaking to the action plan for the previous year. And then page 10 was, other notable updates that they provided, things that weren't necessarily captured in one of those categories. And then, of course, if you're really into the stats and the numbers, there was pages and pages of stats at the end of it. So hopefully everybody had a chance to review that, and I'll just open if you have any questions on that or any concerns about the report. Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to accept the 2024 Detachment Board Annual Report. Member Shevadukis, Member Hodgson.
Moved by member Shevadukis and seconded by member Hodgson that the 2024 Detachment Board Annual Report be accepted.
All in favor? So approved. Thank you. Yes. Gotta watch those lines. Gotta watch those Lions Club raffles. Next on our agenda is 7.7, the Detachment Commander Performance Evaluation Process. I'll just preface this by saying this is an information item for the board. However, if we would like some further discussion on it, we may need to go in camera into closed session to talk about her specifics about her performance, if you would like to provide some of that feedback. But I'm going to try and keep it at a high level, and if we start to enter that area of providing specifics, then we will ask that we stand it down and discuss further in closed session. All right. To give you the background on it, as you recall, at one of the previous Ontario Association of Police Services Boards meetings that I attended, they talked about they were crafting this performance evaluation template, that they were doing it in consultation with detachment commanders and other members of the OPP and some boards. What I learned was at the OAPSB conference this summer, there was a presentation by the OPP Strategy Management Unit around reporting back on that consultation, and they had now crafted a draft which was presented to the OAPSB and approved at that summer meeting as a template to go forward. So of course, from that flows an email to Deb on August 27th from the Strategy Management Unit saying that they're following up on the 2025 performance appraisal process, outlining what the act requires. The board shall monitor the performance of the detachment commander to ensure consistency. They ask that everything be tracked by the Strategy Management Unit, and they then laid out the template for us to follow. And basically what the template is and the process is that the detachment commander is required to review with the board chair or a representative of the board the commitments that they had made on the current year action plan as to what they were going to focus on. Well, of course, Deb didn't do that with us back in January because she wasn't here. And we were just getting going as a board and the new act. So the board chair was then to add to the form that they provided what specific actions we wanted them to focus on for that current year, get feedback from the commander, and then monitor that throughout the course of the year. We were supposed to have done that by June or July of this year to have reviewed the form. And by August 31st, we were to have submitted, it was a deadline to submit our commitments as to what Deb was going to work on, which we then replied back and said, we're not going to do that by August 31st because we're going to discuss it in September and it's on unrealistic timelines. Then by the end of the year, I have to submit this detachment board feedback form to Deb with some of our comments on it. She will then add her comments to it and send it on to the Strategy Management Unit so they can start to track her performance. And then at the end of the year, or follow up to the end of the year, so in January of 2026, we then review the document that we submitted back in January, add any additional comments as to whether she was successful in meeting those action items and targets. And then that goes up to the Strategy Management, and that's captured every year as part of their process. So I have, at this point, met with Deb, looked at the form. It's a fillable box, so it's fairly easy to work with. They've obviously done a fair bit of work on it. They have it broken out into various categories. The first one is legislative requirements. So, for example, is the detachment commander provide the OPP board with reports regarding policing provided by the detachment, which we're obviously receiving. So they're very specific as to what the legislative requirements are. There's a section on detachment commander duties. So going through basically the action plan, crime prevention, law enforcement, maintaining the public peace, emergency response, and assistance to victims, the 5 key pillars that they talk about in the act. Did she meet those things, and did she do all those things, and did her detachment do those things? And then specific to the detachment action plan commitments. So the commitments that we set out in January, did she meet those? And you can list 4, 5, 6, 10, however many items we want to list, and we can say these are our focus. And then the last piece is additional feedback on examples of excellence, opportunities for development, or other feedback. So I have crafted a draft that I've put some of the comments in each of the boxes so far. I will send that back to Deb. If you would like, I can copy the board on my comments to her, or we can discuss at the end of the year when she has her final appraisal in January of next year, which really at this point is setting the ball in motion. A lot of it has to do with that Deb has only been with us. We've only had one meeting with her since she arrived, and we didn't have a chance to set these expectations yet, but is meeting some of the baseline criteria, and we'll continue to monitor that through the end of the year. So that is where we stand with respect to the performance evaluation process. Question from Member Carter.
So thinking strategically, we want her to be rated sort of mediocre to slightly above average, because if not, then we go back into trying to find another detachment commander, I guess is. I hate these large scale review processes that exist, because then everybody becomes a number, and there's so much turnover or movement in the OPP that anybody that's going to be rated highly is immediately going to be plucked.
Well, you'll be happy to know that in the process, they allow for the board chair to make comments, then the detachment commander make comments, and it comes back the response from the OPP detachment board. So at our January meeting, we'll have an opportunity to bring it back to the board and say, we love what she's doing and we want to keep her for the next 3 years. And that'll appear in every box that we go through so that we can try and hold on to her. But yes, point well taken. It's it is a requirement under the act, and it's a requirement for us to participate in. And I do applaud their strategy management review for crafting something in consultation with some of the boards and getting our feedback. We'll see how manageable it is going forward. Any other questions? Seeing none, I would just ask for, I know we don't need a motion, but I'm going to ask for a motion to accept item 7.7, the detachment commander performance evaluation process as laid out. Member Danielson, Member Carter. So Deb to receive and accept the detachment commander performance evaluation process as laid out.
Good thing I got an assistant today. Okay. Moved by Member Danielson and seconded by Member Carter. That a motion that we accept the detachment commander performance evaluation process as laid out.
Thank you. All in favor? Approved. Thank you very much. Just next item, and then maybe I'll look to see if people need a break after we finish off the general business items. 7.8, frequency of board meetings and our 2026 schedule. I know we're a fair bit ahead of the end of the year, but currently in our policy and in the requirement under the Act, we're required to have a minimum of 4 meetings a year. As we've laid out so far, it would be January, May, September, November. I've had a number of board members come to me and raise some concern that we're maybe not meeting enough, and that particularly in our infancy as a board, there's a lot to do, and there's a lot of reports, and there's a lot of getting ourselves acquainted with things. So I wondered the board's interest in increasing it to be a meeting every 2 months. So that would be January, March, May, September, and November. So we would still have the summer break, and we would have no meeting in December, but it would add 1 more meeting at least in between that January and May period, when it seems to be pretty busy and we're ramping up with a lot of things, to add another meeting in there. Or if you wanted to come back earlier at the end of the summer and start earlier in September and then try and squeeze one in November and December, or if you're happy with the September and November. Member Shevadukas.
I think your thoughts about something in between January and May are very appropriate. Put in that extra one. And I'm just going to say that, after May, you got the summer. After September and November, that's not a problem. I think December might be a bit of an issue. But at least between January and May, to my thoughts, I'm sure we could probably maybe put in another one in there.
How do you feel, Member Carter?
Yeah, I would like to go every 2 months. I think our situation right now, if you take, if we have 4 meetings and then we have something like a state of emergency comes up and we have to cancel our meeting, then we're down to 3 and we got to find a special meeting just to meet our 4. So, I think having 6 meetings a year and as important as the summer is to everybody, the fact of the matter is in some ways we have a little more time in the summer than we do it, in the fall and the spring. So, I would say let's just go every 2 months, like the January, March, May, whatever.
Yep. So if we go every 2 months, it would be January, March, May, July, September, and November.
Yeah.
And again, if we don't have items for an agenda, we can always cancel the meeting.
Right.
But at least put it on the books and schedule it for every 2 months.
Yep.
If that's the will of the board. Member Burton, did you have a question? Or?
I was just going to say, I agree with every 2.
Right. The caveat to that would be in conversation with Deb about the requirements under the Act for her to provide her report is she only gets those quarterly. So for her at those in between meetings, she wouldn't necessarily have the spreadsheet that she provides us with all the data and stuff. That would happen at the 4 meetings a year that we do. So I said, that's fine. We're not trying to add to her workload at this point and say, give us enough, but at least it gives her an opportunity to be here in front of us every 2 months and hear what's going on.
And maybe it's February and April so that we could have the quarterly in April, right?
Yeah.
So,
All right, so I will ask for a motion then to adjust our policies and procedures with respect to the frequency of board meetings to allow for meetings every 2 months, commencing in January of 2026. Or something like that. Go ahead.
Okay, I have a motion that the meeting schedule be amended to include meetings in January, March, May, July, September, and November.
yeah.
Remember to make the motion. Member Chevadukas, second by Member Carter.
Motion by Member Chevadukas and seconded by Member Carter that the meeting schedule be amended to include meetings in January, March, May, July, September, and November.
All in favor? Approved. Thank you very much. Sue just got even busier. And Alicia with her agendas just added to your workload. Just before we move to our report, does anybody require a break? 5-minute stretch break? Or you just want to push through and continue on? You good to carry on? Yeah. All right. So next up on our agenda is the chair's update. I don't have a lot for you today, other than I've already mentioned Deb's introduction to the county council on July 23rd. That was something that we'd asked that is when she arrived here that she could be presented in front of council and have a get to know her. The other thing to share with you is that Deb, on behalf of the detachment, has made an application through the county because it has to come through either a upper tier or lower tier municipality to apply for provincial ride funding. So the ride funding grant is provided by the ministry through the province, and each detachment, each municipality can apply for some of that funding, and that is funding that goes above and beyond their regular duties. So then what would happen is that they would hire officers on pay duties to come out and do those ride checks at certain times of the year. So then they spend the money from that grant to pay those officers to come out and do it above and beyond their regular duties. So it gets us more ride enforcement, whether it's to do with boats, whether it's to do with snowmobiles, ATVs, or whether it's just do ride enforcement on the road. She hasn't heard back yet. I think I know she met the deadline, but I don't know when the deadline is for them reporting back. It's usually in the fall, and we hope to hear back to say we got some funding. And then the last piece just to provide you is on October 6th, I'll be attending a training session provided by the OAPSB. It's called Critical Thinking and Police Governance. So they've offered that to chairs and vice chairs of police boards if you want to come and hear a presentation. I'm not sure what quite to expect, but again, Andrew, you're welcome to join me if you'd like to. I can't remember. I think if there is an online option for it or not, or a Zoom option. It's being put on by the OAPSB, and they're just going to talk about critical thinking, particularly when it comes to our governance role as a board. And that is all I have for the chair's report. Member Hodgson.
Yeah, I just want to thank you. You did a lot of work over the summer. That was a lot of meetings with our detachment commander. So thank you on behalf of them. That's really appreciated.
It's what we do. Member Carter.
Do we have any info as to when we might be getting OPP budget?
We don't yet, but I can follow up on that.
Well, it's just that, last year when we had the whatever 18% increase or something, and then we were given some relief of that by the provincial government. If we have our regular, the 18% from last year plus some uplift for this year, we may be getting hit with, large double-digit increases. And OPP costs is our largest single cost in the municipality. Yeah.
Well, and I think part of the challenge, Member
Yeah.
Carter, is also that the OPP budget cycle works on the provincial government cycle, which is
March.
April 1st to March
Yep.
31st, and every municipality then works on a January to December 31st. So it's
Right.
kind of hard to align the two when you're not hearing about it until after the fact. Okay.
Yeah, so we need that number, so anything that can be done to
Yep.
encourage that would be helpful.
Can I leave that with you, Mike, to take back to Deb and see if she can speak to the people at headquarters and find out where the timing of that?
Keep forgetting this thing. I guarantee you it's gonna forget. I have some connections with Municipal Policing Bureau. Absolutely no problem. If somebody provides me, oh, actually, I have email addresses from Deb's email, so
Okay.
I will be able to get you that answer. Not a
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? All right, seeing none. I know we need a motion on 8.1 and 8.2, but can we do them together, Pam, or do you want to do them separate? What? Okay. So over to Mike for detachment commander update, and I think he's had a chance to meet or introduce himself, but Staff Sergeant Mike Davidson from Northumberland up here helping us out while Deb's away.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just my background is I am the ops manager with Northumberland, but for the past year, prior to coming back to Northumberland, I was on temporary assignment as the manager of the grant support team for the OPP. I helped create that team. So when you were speaking about the grants, Chair, I can tell you that I just recently did have a conversation with Solgen about that because I have those connections right now. And we were able to, I can tell you that the RIDE grant has been reviewed and should be announced within the next month. But all of the, all of the RIDE grant is for 4 years. And so the allocation of money that we get now will be in place for 4 years. So you'll be in good stead once it comes. I did help Deb write that grant, and it's well written. So you should be in a good spot for it.
It's always good to have a previous knowledge on what those grant looks like, and the applications look like, make sure all the boxes are ticked. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
And as Mike has mentioned, it is a 4-year process, so we only get one kick at it for now, and then we don't see it again for another 4 years. So it's good to get it in when we did.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you, Deb did a great job. She asked me to look at it, and I said, "Yeah, it's better than the one I wrote." So there you go. You're in good stead there. Just providing, going through the detachment report as provided by Deb. I think everybody got a copy of it.
We aren't sure if they did, so we're just sharing it
Okay.
to the screen momentarily with some IT support. There you go.
Okay.
Possibly the other report.
Yeah, I think it'll be the other document. Like, that's the one. Perfect. Thank you. So as you will note, there was one fatal motor collision within the reporting period of June to August, which is the same for this time last year. Non-fatal collisions, there were 16, which is down 36%. And there is also a reduction in the accidents that we call PD only, or property damage only, with only 89. Overall, collisions have been down 34.2%. Compared to this time last year. You'll also note that there is, as I said before, one fatality in this period. This was an off-road vehicle accident, a single motor vehicle, so there was no but other vehicles involved in it. The cause of the accident is still under investigation with our TTCI unit, so I don't have all of the particulars on that. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the technical collision investigators. The criminal code non-traffic offenses are down to 162 for the reporting period, which is a reduction of 26.7%. Criminal code incidents are down 33.3% with only 16 in this reporting period. Highway Traffic Act are down slightly by 6.9%, and the Liquor License Act are up 100% with 34 incidences. Deb has provided the reason for that as it attributing to increased summer population The majority of these tickets were as a result of people being intoxicated in a public place. Other violations, as noted, are up 15%, but overall in this reporting period, we are down 1.2%. In terms of traffic-related charges, we see a decrease of 9.6% in speeding to 208, an increase of 75% in seatbelt charges from 4 to 7. There's also an increase of 25% in impaired charges from 12 to 15. There's also been an increase in distracted driving with 50 compared to 0 last year. Other than speeding, there has been an increase in traffic enforcement overall. I will say that the increase in distracted driving is aligning with the provincial push that we've been having going on for distracted driving. And I think actually she has me talking about it in this next slide. E-ticketing warnings are down to 208, which is a 37% decrease. This shows that our officers are actually really using discretion. They're getting out and educating the motorists on roadside, which has a huge impact on our communities as a whole. But they're out there doing the enforcement when appropriate. We don't like to see that the warnings are outweighing the actual enforcement. So the officers in Haliburton are using their discretion appropriately, which is great to see. And there's lots of roadside education happening as well. The big 4 priorities are being, in my opinion, well enforced within Haliburton Highlands. Just a reminder, the big 4 priorities are speeding, distracted driving, seat belts, and impaired driving. And I can say just from my 3 days being over here, they're all coming back. Look at the mitt full of tickets I got. Look at this, look at this. And I mean, it's not all about just go out and hammer the public, but they're getting some good engagement and speeds, and they're putting in the time, which is really encouraging to see. It's been very positive. For violent crimes, there is an increase from 5 to 7 in sexual offenses, which is a 40% increase. These are known offenders to the victims in these cases. Assault and firearm charges, and related offenses are up 60.9% from 23 to 37. Most of this is related to IPV or intimate partner violence. And a lot of this is due to the fact that now we have a domestic abuse issues investigator. And this is a really positive thing. To Deb, I don't know if Deb has previously explained this rule, but each detachment now in the province has what we call a DAI, D-A-I-I. And their job is at the end of the day to actually look at and review all domestic violence occurrences. If you're familiar with the history around that, those are some of our most tragic occurrences, and they can escalate. And it's really this job, in my opinion, I call it homicide prevention. So they look at all of our occurrences to make sure that they've been investigated appropriately, and that all the victim supports, more importantly, are there. Very, very encouraging. I met your day officer. He's engaged and really knows his stuff. So I've been impressed with that. And his review is offering some investigative suggestions to people, which is increasing your enforcement and the support to the victims. Other offenses involving violence or threats are up from 16 to 25 with an increase of 56.3%. Overall, in this reporting period, we are up to 69 violent crimes with an increase of 50%. It is also attributed to the increase of population over cottagers in the summer during this reported period. The next slide there, we're looking at property crimes. Break-and enters are up from 15 to 22, which is an increase of 46.7%. Theft over 5,000 is up slightly from 13 to 16, so that's 23.1% increase. Theft under 5,000 is down from 47 to 33, so that's a 29.8% reduction. Possession and trafficking of stolen goods is down 110%. Frauds are down 35.3%, and mischief is up slightly from 18 to 24, which is 33.3% increase. We'll say provincially for frauds, you guys are, sorry, I apologize. Haliburton Highland is the exception to the rule. Frauds are skyrocketing around the province, so congratulations on that. That's really encouraging to see. Overall in this category, we are down 9.3%. There was a string of break and enters and theft in one community that did contribute to this. One individual has been identified and linked to multiple occurrences. So that is some of the explanation there of that increase. There is one possession of drugs charge in this reporting period, which is down from 2 at the same time last year. This is a reduction of 50%. Year to date, there is a reduction of 41.7% in this category as well. The top 5 violations in this reporting period are theft under, that is down from 47 to 33, fraud, that is down from 34 to 22, assault firearms and such related are up 23 to 37, and mischief is up 18 to 24, and failed to comply hasn't changed from 2024 or from 24. Other crime categories, we are down overall 19.8% in all categories. The only category that remains the same is provincial statutes. Policing, as you know, is unpredictable for calls, and it is unknown the impacts or reasons for this decrease, but it's good to see a decrease all the same. Clearance rates. For violence crime, there is a slight decrease of 5.4%. There's also a decrease in property crimes, other drugs, and provincial statutes. These decreases are due to active and ongoing investigations, as it takes time to complete investigations, some of which are complex cases. Clearance rates obviously will fluctuate all the time, and this is something that we do expect to see. Unfounded, there is an overall reduction from 25 to 18 unfounded calls, which is a 26.9% decrease. Other is up to 5 compared to this time last year. These are calls where the criminal act is alleged, and through the hard work and investigation of the officers, it is determined that no criminality occurred, and these will fluctuate as well, depending on the calls for service and the type of complaint. There's been no change in complaints compared to this time last year. There are 3, and all 3 of them have recently been deemed unsubstantiated, which is really great to see. Of the 3, one of the 3, sorry, was an SIU investigation from April, and the officer has since been cleared as well. There have been no public complaints from LECA this reporting period. And our daily activity reports show that there are 1,654.25 cruiser hour patrol hours, 131.5 marine hours, 2.5 ATV patrol, 94 foot patrol hours, and 3.25 school patrol for the total of 1,885.5, which is up from 1,776 hours last year. Community engagement and school patrols will continue to be a focus when time permits. There have been 0 youth charges for this reporting period, which is down from this time last year. Year to date, there have been 6, which is also down from 19 in 2024. Of the 6, 4 were mental health related. Mental health calls for service are up slightly from 71 to 74, with 2 being unfounded. And year to date, there's been an increase to 165 mental health calls. MCERT, is your mental health crisis response team, has been involved in 303 incidents, which include referrals on top of the calls. Of the 303 incidences, 26% are live calls, and the rest are follow-up and referrals. Of the calls during this reporting period, there were 11 voluntary transports to the hospital. So to clarify, that's where somebody says, yes, please take me to the hospital, even though there may not be grounds for their apprehension. 17 involuntary apprehensions under the Mental Health Act, and 1 apprehended under a Form 2. So that's a form that's given to us by a doctor to say, you can go apprehend this person. And the other 2 were criminal charges as a result of these incidences. MCERT continues to be heavily involved and is an asset to our detachment. And that's also Joel Imbo is also our MCERT officer. There were 0 fatal overdoses in this reporting period, which is great. And overall year to date, we are down from 3 to 1. For victim services, referrals continue to occur. They are up slightly from this time last year, but the acceptance is down from this time last year from 67 to 56. It's unknown why the acceptance rate is down, but the referrals continue to be made by the officers. Our victim services is very engaged with our officers and attends briefings to make sure that the officers are aware of their services and their availability. And that just, I guess that last slide just provides you with the source information. Chair, pending any questions, that is my report.
Thanks, Mike. Open it up to the board for any questions, concerns, comments. Member Danielson?
Just as a matter of interest, I had a colleague tell me that they had been stopped for distracted driving, I guess texting at an intersection. She was stopped, but still got charged. But her insurance company refused to insure her over one charge, which I thought was rather extraordinary. Or is that like, what's your experience? with that?
Yeah, so obviously I'll just speak to the offense itself. The Highway Traffic Act does allow if you were stopped at an intersection, you are care and control of the vehicle, so that would fit within the legislation. Obviously, every single insurance company will make their own determinations. I've certainly heard of them going up as a result. Obviously, I don't know this person's background or anything to be able to speak.
Well,
that way.
I would have thought that maybe the insurance would have increased in cost, but
Yeah.
to say, we're not going to insure you anymore over
Yeah.
that one instance seemed pretty radical.
It does seem radical to me too, but I don't know the context, obviously.
And I will share with you, Member Danielson, that is one of the priorities for the detachment area. And speaking with Deb in terms of the action plan, distracted driving is definitely, they're seeing more of it. And so they're trying to encourage the officers to do more enforcement in that area. Because, I see it, I'm sure you all see it, cars, people driving down the road with a cell phone on the steering wheel,
Yeah.
they're talking and they're doing whatever. And it's, it has been a priority for the province for about 5 years now.
It would be about that,
and
yeah.
We're just catching up, I think, here in this county to say, yep, if you're distracted, you're going to get a ticket.
It's actually quite shocking. Because I've not have a driver's license for the last few months, that I've had people driving and they're literally driving and texting and all over the road. And it's just like, please don't kill me, while you're driving me around.
Yeah, I have, I will say that every detachment that I go to, we always relate everything back to the why, back to the public safety, and quite often distracted driving becomes when the officers are talking, they'll say, yeah, it's as dangerous as impaired, it's as dangerous
Mhm.
as anything else. And it is one of those things that is as leading to deaths. I've investigated quite a few of them myself, accidents that are related to that have resulted in deaths. So something that we take very, very seriously
And so preventable.
and so preventable. Yeah.
Oh, one person actually said to me, no, I'm a great driver. No, you're not.
Well, and if you start looking at things like motorcyclists and coming the other way and they're seeing a car weaving all over the place. And I know one of the campaigns that a lot of police services are really pushing, I talked to Deb about it, was, make the call. If you're following a car and it's weaving all over the road, don't assume they're texting or don't assume they're impaired. Make the call, have a police officer stop that vehicle. And if they're not impaired, then it's pretty clear they were distracted. And, at least they'll get a caution for it and a warning, and that'll maybe deter them from doing it the next time. Other questions? Just a couple of comments, and I will follow up with Deb on behalf of the board on this, but there are, from my perspective, there's really some opportunities for some proactive messaging around some of the stats that we're seeing here. When I look at, the break-and enters and seeing the increase in the break-and enters, the opportunity to really reach out to the community and ask for them to report suspicious activity, ask for them to consider cameras within their businesses, within their homes, and to help the police investigate the matters after the fact. The quality of those camera pictures aren't always the best, but at least it gives the police something to work with. And similarly, when we're looking at, you know, the proactive messaging around distracted driving, rather than just going right to enforcement, to start doing some of that proactive messaging, saying we are going to be increasing our presence, we are going to be doing more of this, and be forewarned, when you get that ticket, it's going to be costly. So put your phones away, drive carefully.
Mr. Chair, if I may. So as I ran the grant support team, I also was, that's all part of community engagement. And so I was in charge of those proactive measures as well. And again, I don't know how much has this been discussed previously, but through Joel Limbo, we have access to the Community Crime Prevention Community Support Bureau, which has certain reviewed and supported programs such as CamSafe, where there are registered cameras that people can say, I have a camera outside, I register it with the police. We don't have access to it. It's just we know where those cameras are, so that if we have to investigate a break and enter, we can say, hey, 123 Main Street, you say you have a camera, can we see it? And that's all it is, just say, hey, I have a camera and I'm willing to share my information. That's one tool. The other one is through the auxiliary program, which I know you have here, and they've been very engaged. I've been impressed with your auxiliary program in a short amount of time. We have what's called Safeguard, and that's crime prevention through environmental design. And that's something else that you can have a look at. And the last one is a community watch type of program. We have to be careful with that one and how it's messaged. It's run by the municipality. It's community run, but OPP facilitated, so that we don't get into confidential informant type of extending your privilege or anything that way. But that is certainly something that Joel Limbo, with the facilitation of Sergeant Giovanetti, who's the Community Mobilization Engagement Coordinator for Central Region, would be able to provide you some information on. And it's just some resources that I know are available to help mitigate some of those issues.
Thanks for that, Mike. Very familiar with the Safeguard program. It's a really good opportunity for the auxiliaries to engage with people in advance and do that assessment of their properties, and tell them your hedges are too high or your trees or whatever. Consider these things when you're looking at, from an environment outside of your property, what you should consider doing better on your behalf. So they do that. They can either do it proactively if people request it, or that some agencies have put it in place as soon as somebody is a victim of a break and enter, they send the auxiliary unit out to do that Safeguard. Great program. And then just lastly, and you touched on it, I know we've really been pushing as a board to encourage Deb around the MCERT team and those pieces, but I feel like it's important to go on the record as well as a board to stress how impressed I am anyways with the increase in our mental health supports in the community. The one through the community food centers that they're now doing some drop-in stuff, and then also the one at the health hub that I'm sure you've been involved with, Sue, and others. But really nice to see them starting to get some more attention to the mental health and the care, the proactive care that's so important to get people. So the more the better. All right. Any other questions of the acting detachment commander? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion then, Pam. A motion to accept the chair's report and the detachment commander update. Member Chevadukas, Member Carter.
Moved by Member Shevadukas and seconded by Member Carter that the reports provided in Section 8 be accepted.
All in favor? So approved. Thank you. Did you want to touch on the second slide at all, Mike, before we it's more of
Thank
an
you very
information
much.
item, just the media stuff? I know.
Yes, if we can make that, we can certainly make that available to everybody because it's been made, put out there for public consumption. But these are some of the media highlights. If we just take a quick flip through them, they really do highlight the good work that your officers have been doing. As you can see, there's been some marine activity. We'll just keep flipping through them quickly. And then some proactive engagement in terms of your investigators, particularly your crime unit, et cetera, have been doing a lot of really great investigative work and leveraging social media that way. That's a Veterans Day barbecue, which is important for our community, and to bring everybody back. And then we like the feel good stuff as well. Just this type of stuff really works well to show people that officers are just people. And so when they see us, they see, I don't want anybody to see Staff Sergeant Davidson. I want people to see Mike. And so when we put up posts like this, it helps to break down those barriers. And then again, we were talking about that, suspect impaired driving or people texting, etc. Then and please call it in, and that type of messaging really helps. The Kids Bike Fest, the bike safety is one of those things that we've been working really hard with. And there is the Ride Smart program as well that Joel Limbo will have access to, which is one of the things for youth engagement. And then some more community engagement and MCERT engagement, which has been really good, both at the senior level with seniors as well as with youth. And yeah, we do continue to be engaged on social media and to with traditional media as well as just getting the word out there. We do have a lot of probationary members in Haliburton Highlands. Each probationary member is required to do a community engagement project as part of their probation period. It's called the CEOI, Community Engagement Orientation Initiative. And it's one of those things that we make it a general practice, that expectation that thou shall. So it's not just Joel Limbo out there doing all the community engagement. Every officer should be doing it every day. And that's part of the service delivery model that we have.
Thanks, Mike. And just again, a little shout out to my friend to my right here that initiated that HHOPP hashtag after one of our previous meetings. We recognize that a lot of the communications, if it's coming out of headquarters, for example, didn't recognize Haliburton Highlands as a hashtag. So that allows us to pick that up quicker now because we can see it. We can then repost it and redistribute it and those sort of things. So thanks, Sue, again, for staying on top of that and for making sure that we get the work that's going on here recognized and shared with others. So thanks for that. Appreciate it, Mike. Moving on to item 9, communication and correspondence. You would have received the items that are there in front of you, the all chiefs memos. There's actually the 0050 and 0051. The 51, again, if you're interested, particularly in community safety and well-being and the work that Sue and others in the community are doing, that risk tracking database is a great report to show you some of the things that they're focusing on. It's a provincial snapshot, not always local, so it's a, we don't have the ability necessarily to drill down other than a region, but it gives, a pretty good snapshot of some of the work that's going from assessing the risk, tracking it, and then doing something about it. And the newsletter 9.4, and then the correspondence report that Pam puts together for us based on all the emails and things that we receive. So any questions, Member Hodgson?
Yeah, 9.3, is that more of a municipal issue? I don't really understand it. We've never spoken to that.
It is, it's so each provincial offense court is run by the province, but my understanding is the municipality does have some say in how they're run. I could be wrong on this, but it used to be. Maybe they've changed it. Maybe that's the focus of the Bruce County's resolution. I think there was 2 pieces to that, if I remember, Andrew, is the Ministry of Sol Gen for review of police reform, but then looking at the provincial offense process, which I think they're referring to the justice of the pieces and the bail review and how they're getting out, not necessarily the provincial offense court for tickets and those sort of things. Right. Remember your microphone.
We had conversations with our friends in Lindsay who run the court. And yes, we were getting money pre-COVID. It used to be that we would get our share of the money. Now with the costs that they have to run things, particularly with transport and with security and so on and so forth. Most of the courts are running at a loss. And so we get zero money now from Lindsay on
So
that.
is this something you agree with them from Gray Bruce? Should we add on to what they're doing?
I'm not, at the end of the day, when we went through it, I mean, they showed us their numbers. And there, there wasn't,
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I think from my understanding of this letter, Andrew, is that the reason why they sent it out to the Interior Association of Police Services Boards, that other boards then have an opportunity to support that letter and say, we agree with their appeal to have the Sol Gen review this. We support the mechanism
Sure.
that they're ensuring, which we can absolutely do.
Yeah.
So if it's the will of the board, I'd be happy to make sure we send something in support of that resolution. Okay, I'll follow up with Sue as to how we go about sending that letter of support and. All right. And as you'll see from the correspondence report in 9.5, we do receive a fair number of pieces of correspondence, as I'm sure the mayors do, over different things, and some of them we handle as a board, others we send back and say it's not a board issue, please take it to the appropriate agency and politely as we can. But it's all included in that report. So again, just ask for a motion to receive. Member Hodgson, Member Danielson.
Moved by member Hodgson, and seconded by member Danielson, that the items under the communication correspondence be received for information and that the HHOPP DB send a letter of support to Grey Bruce OPP DB for their resolution to the Ministry of the Solicitor General.
So all in favor? Approved. Thank you very much. Unless anybody feels a need, I don't believe there's anything for our closed session. Member Carter? No. And notice of upcoming business. Member Carter.
And just announce that Minden will be having our flag raising for Truth and Reconciliation on Monday at 10 a.m. And usually the detachment sends some folks to that. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. And I know Deb may have got it, but if she hasn't, Mike, then, a lot of those from my past life, it's important for the police to be at those events and support them as best they can. So if we can make sure that the municipalities do let the detachment know about it, or whoever's organizing it, lets them know about it, then they can get it on the radar for staff.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, through you, just to confirm, 10 a.m. for Minden and for Algonquin Highlands? 9 a.m.?
They took the bells away years ago. Now we got sirens. Date of our next meeting is scheduled for November 26, 2025 at 1 p.m. And unless there's anything else for the good of the board, I'll ask for a motion of adjournment. Member Carter, Member Hodgson, all in favor? Approved. Thank you very much for everybody's time today. The meeting is adjourned.